we were talking a lot of Patriots there. It's autopsy time on the New England Patriots, Sam. We've been doing this for teams that are dead, teams that are done. Cause of death for the 3-11 New England Patriots. Do you have an answer on cause of death here for New England?
I mean, I guess the cause of death is the lack of talent, particularly on offense. I mean, the fact that on paper they have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL and one of the worst receiving corps in the NFL, and on paper has translated into the games, so that even with a quarterback playing really well as a rookie, albeit with some fairly significant mistakes in there as well, which is a factor, but even with Drake May looking really good, they still look like garbage on offense because there's just no talent around him.
Yeah, I mean, cause of death for me would be they ran it back with the 4-win team that got everybody run out of town. And this isn't a new opinion. I mean, I've said that on this show probably 5 times in the last year when we were talking about the preseason preview on New England. Like, what should expectations be? Well, they ran it back with the same team that had 4 wins last year, ran Bill Belichick out of town, ran Mac Jones out of town, and said we can't have those guys here anymore. But then they re-signed a big chunk of the defense.
Yeah, they
re-signed a whole bunch of guys, and the only difference was they drafted a quarterback. They went bridge quarterback Jacoby Brissett for a little bit. They drafted Drake May, and I agree with a lot of what Ross said about Drake May. We've said it a lot on the show here. Very impressive. I'm impressed that he's doing it with this situation. This is the type of situation where if an established NFL quarterback had to deal with this receiving core and this offensive line, you would say this team failed, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, whoever, would name star quarterback that was put into this situation, you would say team fails them. There's no way to have success here. I think in New England's case, they just hit rock bottom as a roster. Yeah, they ran it back with the same team as last year, so the expectation shouldn't have been higher. But it's a multi-year rebuild. I think it was always going to be a multi-year rebuild. So I don't necessarily blame them for being in for Elliott Wolf being in this spot at the moment necessarily, or Gerard Mayo. This is just the spot that they're in. They got the quarterback. Now they got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do going forward to improve really both sides of the ball, but especially on offense.
Yeah, there really is. Like that. On the one hand, it's unfortunate because they drafted, a couple of receivers, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, and you're like, well, maybe one or both those guys can hit, and suddenly you've got a young receiver in addition to these guys. Like, it's the kind of thing where one of those hitting completely transforms a receiving core theoretically, but Polk has struggled badly, year one, particularly with drops. And it's like, so they're getting nothing out of Baker, really. So now you're just back to it's still just a terrible receiving core. There's no one to work with. And then the entire offensive line, they didn't have enough clear resources thrown at it. And where they did throw resources, it hasn't paid dividends yet. So it's just a total and complete lack of talent around Drake May. Basically, it's Hunter Henry, the end.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, so the other thing that's happening, and, I'm in New England right now, and a lot of the rumblings around town, it's like, is Gerard Mayo coaching for his job and this and that? And I'm not saying he should be absolved of any criticism, but I'll repeat, this team won 4 games last year with Bill Belichick as the head coach. They weren't much better the previous years, to be honest. And all they changed was brought in a first-time head coach, reshuffled the entire coaching staff, and switched quarterbacks. There's really not a whole lot of change. And you could argue maybe the talent's even worse than last year because of what Ross said. At points, 3/5 of this offensive line had fewer than 100 total. It had Ross Tucker-like, no offense, experience at the NFL level, fewer than 100 snaps coming in. So I don't know what the expectations should have been for Gerard Mayo, as a first-time head coach. And I don't know if he needs to come back or if you have an opportunity to bring in a Ben Johnson, if he would come in and do it, or a Mike Vrabel. The rumors are floating that Mike Vrabel would come in and try to fix this thing. But, man, I don't know what expectations should have been. You're in a tough AFC East with the worst talent in the division, and I think they hit expectations this year.
Yeah. The good news for them, though, is that they're really well positioned in the offseason to rebuild this thing, right? And as Ross said, you look like you've nailed the quarterback situation. So the thing that everyone's usually trying to do once they hit the reboot button is, oh man, now we've got to find a quarterback. Now we've got to go through that process. It's a gamble. We might miss. We might have to do it again. They look like they've nailed their quarterback. They might be headed for, one of the top picks in the draft, and they don't need a quarterback, whereas everyone else at the top of the draft is going to be in that market. So the New England Patriots might have the first available pick of the non-quarterbacks effectively in this draft, or potentially be able to trade out of their pick to a team that does need a quarterback. So either they're drafting the best offensive lineman in the draft, the best, receiver in the draft. Maybe they're the destination for Travis Hunter. Either they're doing that, or they're trading out of their pick to a team that needs the quarterback and picking up a giant haul. Either way, they're theoretically kickstarting this rebuild.
Yeah, so I think we'll do the whole fixing every team in 5 minutes during the offseason. We'll spend more time on this, but they at least need to take some shots in free agency when it comes to the offensive line. And it doesn't have to be big name players, but you have to get the $10 to $15 million guards, and you have to find a way. Shaq Mason, former Patriot a couple of years ago, was traded for a 6th round pick. I mean, they probably need to find 4 starters on the offensive line. And to me, that's a combination of mid-tier free agents, maybe you flip a pick for a starter, maybe you draft a Will Campbell or whoever at Kelvin Banks at tackle. The other debate we're going to have quite a bit was the Travis Hunter thing. Is Travis Hunter's trade value going to be the equivalent of a quarterback in this draft? Right. And if you have a chance to get Hunter at 3 or 2, do you take him or trade down? And you hear me say trade down as a solution to all these teams. That it really might need to happen with New England, because I don't know how they solve this in an offseason. I don't know how you improve at 3 receiver spots and 4 offensive line spots in an offseason. And again, we're not even talking about the inconsistent pass rush on defense, the need for just more consistent players in the front 7, the whole thing on the defensive side of the ball.
I think when you need this many players, this many upgrades at one time, what you really want is sure things. You really want guarantees effectively, even if you're acquiring fewer of them than you need. I think getting certainties is really important. The Patriots have the most cap space in the NFL as well, but as we're going to be saying repeatedly a million times, it looks like an awful free agent group to have money to spend, right? Like they're not, even if you wanted to go nuts and create the new spending spree, you're looking at the landscape and like, I don't know where I'm putting the money. There's just not that many guys I would want to pay in this free agent group. But I wonder if that puts them in the market of potential trades where teams are like, we're not paying this guy, but we might trade him away to a team that is willing to pay him. So, the Bengals have been doing this dance with T. Higgins for a while. Would they tag and trade T. Higgins and the Patriots then give him the long-term contract that he wants? Are there players like that where New England, and maybe this could happen in combination with trading down in the draft, right? Where you trade out of one of the top picks in the draft and then start using some of those picks instead of using them to just draft more players. Maybe you start using some of those 2nd and 3rd round picks to acquire players like T. Higgins, actually trade for established NFL veterans that you're willing to pay money to.
Yeah, I think they should absolutely be in the Higgins market. Again, we've seen almost every young quarterback that's had success over the last few years has been paired with at least a top guy. A.J. Brown going to Philly and Tyreek Hill going to Miami, and Mahomes having his Tyreek Hill and Kelsey. We've seen all of that. Allen got Stephon Diggs. To get the most out of May, I think you have to find that guy. So I think Higgins is absolutely in play, and I'm with you. I think that you get this allotment of draft picks, and when I say trade down, it's not just to take 12 players; it is to have that trade flexibility as well. So yeah, I think it's got to be a creative offseason. I think for New England, offense heavy, kind of trust that the defense will improve again in year 2, second year in the system with a lot of guys coming back, and maybe trust some of the continuity there, but you got to go heavy offense. But again, just to repeat, I think cause of death was they were pretty much dead and buried when they came into the season. They didn't have much of a chance unless Gerard Mayo was just a superstar and Drake May was a superstar who could overcome everything around him. And to this point, I think I think Drake May should be a disaster out there given this situation, and he hasn't been. And I think that's the biggest win this season for New England.
So cause of death for the New England Patriots is latent death. You know,
Bill Belichick.
This was already
Bill
a dead
Belichick.
team. It had just yet to manifest itself in obvious rigor mortis-like symptoms. Now
Bill Belichick killed him.
Yeah, now the death
it.
is apparent, and we're just seeing it. Yeah, months later. Just to kind of repeat or state for the first time, either repeat or state for the first time, the New England Patriots currently occupy the number 3 overall pick based off tiebreakers, but there are, 5 teams sitting there at 3 wins. They are a win or a loss back from the Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants, who each have only 2 wins. The Raiders run in Jacksonville at New Orleans, and then the Chargers, and the Giants run in where they finish with the Eagles game. They've got the Colts, and they're on the road to the Falcons as their next game. So they're in really good position right now with the 3rd overall pick. Potentially, the 2 or the 1 pick is there, but they're going to have a really good draft pick to try and parlay into, more picks or a really good player.
Yeah, New England has Buffalo twice and the Chargers. We'll see if Buffalo's playing for anything in Week 18, but,
right.
Not a whole lot of wins necessarily on the schedule. You're right. So, I mean, they're probably picking top 3 somewhere in there, and they don't need a quarterback. They'll be holding a lot of cards potentially for a team that wants to come up, because there's the Titans, the Jets. There's a lot of teams picking like 7 to 12 who are going to need a QB. And unlike last year where 6 went, this year could be only 2 or 3, especially as more guys like Drew Aller just announced he's going back to Penn State. Garrett Nussmeier going back to LSU. I don't even know if those guys warranted top 10 picks, but anybody that's even been in that conversation, a lot of those guys are going back to school or they have question marks. So it could be a 2 QB race that, for teams like the Giants, the Raiders, the Titans, the Jets that are looking for a QB. And so the Patriots are in strong position there. And that's where, again, I think they have to leverage it. At the end of the day, do they need a left tackle and a right tackle? Yes. I would say let's not make 1 pick. Let's try to spin that into way more if possible.
And maybe Travis Hunter is part of the answer there, right? You get 2 players for the price of 1.
2 players.
You draft Travis Hunter, you upgrade at wide receiver and cornerback. It's perfect. You get 2 upgrades with only 1 pick. It's just printing money at that stage.
I mean, we're really going to have those conversations a lot this offseason. Do you pick Travis Hunter or do you trade back 8 spots, get Teterow and McMillan and another corner later? Like, you're going to have those legit discussions because Hunter's probably not a 2-way player full time at the NFL level.
Right.
I'm not, he's going to like clip all those and, you said I couldn't do it, but I don't know if the NFL is going to give him that opportunity, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think right now the prevailing wisdom is he will be drafted as one side of the ball and then maybe have a little, a package of plays or a situational role on the other side of the ball. I really don't think anybody is out there thinking that they can replicate what he's just done in college, even though what he's just done in college earned him the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he's just done it to an exceptionally high level on both sides of the ball throughout an entire college season. I still don't think anyone's looking at that in the NFL and going, that's a viable option going forward.
And I just want to call out that terrible corner of the internet that is claiming that Travis Hunter only won the Heisman because of snap count. That is absurd. That is a stupid take. Snap counts are a fun stat because it's painting a picture of what he's brought to the table that no one else in college football history has done, or at least recent college football history. Maybe one time back in the 40s when Tungsten Arm was doing it, but it's incredible what Travis Hunter did. And he's he is the unique non-quarterback prospect to come out in a long, long time. We'll have plenty to say about him.
It's just anything the only else? The snap count thing is just the only way of articulating that he's playing a full-time role on both sides of the ball. Like it's just a reality of like, this is how we quantify that, right? Look at the number of snaps he's playing relative to everybody else, and then further think what that means, right? Lack of taking a breather on the sideline, number of, like, he has to learn 2 different playbooks effectively. He's got to attend meetings at 2 different positions. Like, it's just a way of shorthanding all of that. Like, it's singularly unique and special for a guy to be a legitimate 2-way player in any form of modern time. I don't know how long ago you need to go back. Like, other guys have had packages on the other side of the ball, Chris Gamble or Charles Woodson or whoever. But to find a legitimate every down starter on both sides of the ball, I don't know how far back you have to go, but it's a long ass time, even independent of the fact that he did both of them extremely well, right? If he'd been an average starter on both sides of the ball, I think there would have been an argument that he's the Heisman Trophy winner. But he wasn't. He was really good on both sides of the ball. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer, even with the season that Ashton Genty had, which is legitimately one of the best running back seasons ever.
Yeah, I agree. I'm happy for Hunter. I'm glad he won. Sad for Genty. Thought he deserved to win as well in any other year.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they were 1-2 because they were outstanding this year. From a New England perspective, anything else to touch on here? I think they're one of the teams I think we'll talk about a lot this offseason because it's one of those, you have the quarterback. What do you do with all your other resources to improve what the quarterback, his situation? And so there'll be a fun discussion this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.